Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a brand new episode of Trash Talk. I'm here with a very special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Tharries. I make Doctor Who videos on YouTube.
Well, jumping straight into it, I'm a massive Doctor Who fan. I've been watching your content for the past maybe 2, 3 years now,
Oh wow!
and I just wanted to just say thank you for coming on the podcast because this is
No
a
worries.
an episode for me. I don't usually speak to people that outside of commentary stuff, so it's nice to speak to someone who has a common interest.
Yeah, no, my pleasure, man. Yeah, I love doing stuff like this. It's always fun to
Mm-hmm.
fun to shoot the stuff about Doctor Who. Talk to someone about it who has is as interested in it as I am. Yeah, I'm always down for that.
No, 100%. And just jumping straight into it, I want to know about your content creation process, right? You're someone that covers news updates on Doctor Who, so it's set photos and stuff that comes out on Twitter and just other platforms. So what does a weekly content creation process look for you when you're making your videos?
Oh, honestly, it's an interesting question for me because I try and keep obviously when it comes to new stuff, I try and keep up to date, relatively as much as possible, and that means you've kind of got to sometimes be ready to do things at the most random of times because Doctor Who, it's not like other franchises where they've kind of got their release schedules down in terms of promotion and stuff. Stuff can still be very sporadic. Things can just sort of happen. You're like, oh, okay, guess I got to do this now. But then on the other token, there will be times where even now, when I would argue that there's been more stuff going on recently, there'll still be kind of quieter zones where there isn't as much news. But you obviously, I'll fill that content gap elsewhere. With other stuff, so theory-based content or opinion pieces. Or things like that, things of that nature. I think for me, in terms of my weekly process, it's a lot of just part of it is just I'll have lists of ideas in my head constantly that I want to do, and then depending on what news stories come out, they'll kind of supplement those news stories. Then, and I tend to record quite a bit, and I try and upload very consistently. So yeah, and then I guess that's how my process works at the moment.
No, 100%, and I can relate to that as someone who, again, I wait for new stuff with just in regards to commentaries. So of course, different, but in the same of I never know when something's going to happen, right? You've always got to be ready to be able to sit down, record a video, post it, and be ready, right? And it is spontaneous. You could be doing anything, and there could be a brand new set photo, or in my case, it could be a brand new something that's going on online. So it's always you've got to be prepared and ready. And I think you've nailed that on the head. To be fair, over the past couple of years, because you've been doing it for so long now. I guess it's sort of become the normal to you, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's been people who've done Doctor Who news content before. I think at this point, I'm probably one of the few that does it as regularly because I think there's kind of been, obviously, and I completely get it. It's a hard thing to maintain. Keeping up to date with everything in a franchise, especially because, like I say, it is so sporadic. And Doctor Who is it's one of those things that sort of ebbs and flows in terms of sometimes it's on the top of the world and everyone's talking about it. Other times, no one knows what Doctor Who is. It's sort of in this weird thing where it's it's popular, but it's kind of always up and down. You know what I mean? So I think for a lot of people, they kind of tried really hard. They try really hard to get into the new stuff when something big happens, like in New Era, for example. A lot of people started around the time of the first Jodie Whittaker series, myself included, that kind of thing. But then slowly after that, as kind of things get more and more, there's a level of standardization to the way news is, and it becomes less exciting. People will drop off, and then something new will come along, like Russell, for example. And then you'll just get a bunch of new people coming in then. And I do think, and this is one of my kind of predictions for the next kind of couple of years in terms of at least the space that I occupy, I think you're going to see a lot of Doctor Who content creators kind of be birthed out of this new era that they're doing. I think it's kind of inevitable, especially with Disney Plus and it being accessible to, everyone, not only in the UK but across the pond, in a way that it hasn't really been traditionally.
Mhm.
There are some, US and Australian Doctor Who content creators, but it's still a very UK dominated space, and I still think that will largely be the case. But I think you will start to see a bit more diversity in that aspect, which will be interesting.
Yeah, 100%, and especially like on regards to like the Disney Plus stuff, like I guess as well, like there's a brand new generation of people that have probably never heard of Doctor Who before, who like get a lot of their content from streaming services like Disney Plus. They'll be introduced to like this brand new era of Doctor Who. So I do feel like hopefully in the next couple of years or so, there will be like a brand new like a wave of content creators within the Doctor Who sphere. Because like
Yeah,
I'm someone that keeps up to date with the content creators, like Confused Adipose, like I'm on the like Twitter side of stuff as well,
yeah,
and like you do see the same old content creators, and not that
yeah.
that's a bad thing, of course,
No, no,
but you do see
100%.
the same old people that like dominate the like area, you know?
Yeah. No, 100%. Like, it's funny. I still consider myself relatively new because I
Hmm.
was sort of one of those that came sort of. I didn't really have much prominence until at least like Series 13, like Flux stuff, because that's
Yeah.
when basically, to give you a bit of a rundown, there wasn't much news or really much at all known about Flux as a series. Partly because it was COVID filmed and stuff, so there was a lot of it was under wraps. Other parts are
Hmm.
just to do with the way the show was being marketed at the time. So there became this vacuum of information that was often filled by kind of rumors and leaks and hearsay, essentially. And I didn't really have anything else to cover,
Hmm.
so I was like, I'll cover these leaks on Reddit, knowing that they probably weren't true, but that was kind of the fun of it. We were dissecting, how accurate these things could be, or how much bollocks they could be, and that was part
Yeah.
of the fun trying to pick through these things. And that was really where I got my foot in the door. But I do kind of feel like you say, even though I consider myself new, I'm still technically part of that sort of wave from the last 5 years. So that you haven't really
Hmm.
seen many new people spring up yet, but I do think that's coming. I think we're on the cusp of a new load of people. So I'm really excited for that. I'm very much excited for that. But I 100%
100%.
agree with you, because I think it's partly just because, like I say, Doctor Who was in a bit of a more insular, smaller phase, and like there were less people involved in the community. So as such, a lot of the people producing content have been the same people for years. Names that spring to mind, I immediately think of, Council of Geeks has been doing it for years, Stu Bagfull,
Hmm.
Mr. Tharries, all these different content creators who've been around, basically since, and not to make them feel old, since I was a kid watching Doctor Who YouTube,
Yeah.
because I very much grew up with that sphere as well. Obviously, there's some that still exist, there's some that don't, but you are totally right. It has been very dominated by a few people for a while now, and I'm really excited to see just those new voices coming in. And I think, a lot of people, I think some content creators, when they think of their communities growing, they kind of feel sort of threatened by that, in a sense. They
Hmm.
sort of feel like, well, there's going to be like more competition or whatever. Like, I don't see that at all. I see that as more, more of a challenge and more fun, really, to have more people to talk about it with and hear the different perspectives of. Because I don't know whether you're on Doctor Who Twitter that much, but it feels like we all have the same conversations about like 4
Yeah.
times a week. And it's like,
Yeah.
I really need some new conversations going on here, man. This is, you know.
Yeah. Like recycling between the like the 60th anniversary hot takes of like the Jodie Whittaker regeneration and stuff like every other week or so. It does feel like I'm hoping with the 60th anniversary, so it's something that I do want to talk about in a bit. That hopefully that they will bring in a bunch of brand new content creators and just people that can voice their own opinions on it that maybe
Yeah,
didn't beforehand.
yeah, 100%. I think that's the thing. I think because there's been so many similar people in the fandom for so long, and so, like so many of the same people in the fandom for so long, the discourse surrounding the show is kind of just in a treadmill at this point. It's sort of
Yeah.
just because it's the same people having the same conversations. I think when you have people who come in for this new stuff, I think we'll start hearing perspectives that haven't been heard yet, and I'm really looking forward to that. I think it'll just be quite refreshing.
Yeah.
I do wonder to what extent the fandom will grow. I think it will grow. It'll just be interesting to see how big it can get. Will it rival? I wonder if it'll rival things like Stranger Things that have like huge online fandom spaces and stuff like that. I really hope it does. I think that would be wonderful to see. I'd love there to be another Doctor Who golden age, so to speak.
Yeah, I understand, and especially just speaking to like the maybe like ordinary like person right out on the street that maybe like isn't like a Doctor Who fan, but they know of it because of like how big it's getting again. Like that's something that like I hope starts happening again, and hopefully, fingers crossed, a bigger push of merchandise.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, just diving straight into like sort of like a topic that we've been sort of like touching on off and on, which is the 60th anniversary. And just for you, like, what's your overall thoughts on everything we know so far with it?
So the 60th in particular, I think it's an interesting one because there's been, I think overall there's a pretty much almost unanimous excitement for the 60th. It's interesting.
Yeah.
If you'd have told me out of context, right, the 60th was just David Tennant coming back for a couple of episodes, that might run the risk of, without context, sounding a bit naff, if you know what I mean. In terms of just out of context, oh, that's it. But thinking about it, I think it's such a good idea in terms of the narrative potential of it, because obviously the 10th Doctor, for anyone who watches Doctor Who knows, the 10th Doctor was the one Doctor who didn't want to go, he didn't want to change. So having him come back and resolving that whole arc, I think is a brilliant idea, particularly for an anniversary. And I think, the reincorporation of like Donna Noble and everything like that, like the whole memory thing, I mean, that's brilliant as well. And I think, presuming that the Toymaker is the villain, which we all kind of assume anyway, even though they've not officially confirmed it, it's sort of been, it's basically been inferred through set pictures and costumes and things like that. Having the Toymaker, who is this very cosmic, theatrical entity kind of manipulating things behind the scenes like a big show, I think not only does it provide like the perfect opportunity for some meta commentary, but it's also just the perfect staging grounds for like an anniversary. And it's something different because Doctor Who fans are very used to the multi-Doctor crossover thing. Like, oh, there's a couple of Doctors and there's a villain and they've got to resolve this conflict. That's what most anniversary stories are, So for me, I think, whilst I know a lot of people wanted that and are disappointed that we don't have that, for me, I think it's interesting to have something different. We've never had the Doctor revisiting an old face before. And that's another argument that you'll see a lot, is kind of this idea of, is the 60th sort of, and all of this whole idea too nostalgia heavy or too, I guess, reliant on like the past and not putting forward enough new ideas. I would argue that in and of itself, the Doctor returning to a past face is a new idea. Sure, you have the Curator and Day of the Doctor when Tom Baker came back, but it's never really been something that's been explored to a thorough degree, and I think there's a lot of narrative potential in that, which I think if anyone can do well, it'll be Russell.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like as well, like a lot of people, like I feel like Russell knows what he's doing. For the average person, right? Well, when they think of the Doctor, they either think of the fourth Doctor, like especially the older generation, or David Tennant, right? Like he knows what he's doing. He's trying to like cultivate like not only a new audience, but also like bring back some of the viewers that did get lost during the Chibnall era. But as well, like not only has it also been hinted at, like you touched on briefly, like Tom Baker's return. Like I feel like there has been like a lot of like things hinting at like a possible like of something like this happening in the future. Like I feel like some of like the like hate and stuff it gets, like I do get it, right? Like and I do get people's concerns because like any like actor returning to like a role that really like not made their career, but like what they're most known for, right? Like I get the worries there, and like if it will taint the perfect ending, or like in my belief is like a really good ending, right? So no, I get that, and but no, I feel like it is pretty unanimous that a lot of people are just genuinely excited to see what Russell was going to do with the 60th and what David and Catherine Tate will bring to the table again.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think what you were talking about earlier when it comes to, in terms of like the fears of the ending, I completely get that, because like Donna's ending, the memory wipe, is so emotional. And I don't want it to be fully reversed, like in terms of a complete reversal, because it's kind of one of the things that annoys me about a lot of Moffat Doctor Who is that when people would die or when characters would suffer loss, it would kind of be reversed. Like, it was like, oh, Clara died, but psych, she's got a TARDIS now, she's fine. Bill becomes Spider-Man, but then the pilot comes along, the girlfriend comes along, and basically it's like, no, we'll save you and do all this. And don't get me wrong, I like some of those scenes. There's some great scenes, but one of the things I do want is that level of consequence again when it comes to like Doctor Who. That's one thing that I'm planning on covering relatively soon. I would like to see some more. I don't need every character to die as such, but I'd like a bit more of that. Oh, they're really in danger here, because you still got that with Russell. He didn't do deaths as much as such, but what he did do is he had big consequences for characters, right? So Rose gets stuck on a parallel world, Donna loses her memory, like we say, and then you had minor characters like Linda with a Y and Kylie Minogue's character in the Christmas one that die. So yeah, I think that's something I really want. And I think another thing, briefly going back to the 60th again, would just be, I'm not as concerned by the whole is the show going forward enough thing, on the basis that we already know we have Shooty and Millie, and all of that was like announced first. Like that was all announced first, and then this is the 60th thing. You know what I mean? So, and I think a lot of the stuff we've been seeing about Series 14 feels largely really fresh. Like I can't predict a lot of what's going to happen, and that excites me. I'm really intrigued to see what they do with it. It feels so unique.
No, 100%. And I do really agree with you with like the lack of consequences during the Moffat era and even the Chibnall era, right? A lot of the companions like Graham and Ryan leaving, like a lot of people like, and even Yaz leaving, right? A lot of people were expecting some like form of death or like a massive tragedy, right? But it just wasn't that. And like I do get people's frustration with that. So I do really hope a lot more of those like emotional heart pull moments does sort of get brought back, and maybe just more of the bluntness as well. The Russell brought to the table originally, that made people, I don't know, I feel like I fell in love with the show, but because of that, right? Because like I knew that Russell wasn't afraid to like actually harm like the main characters, where I feel like Moffat, like although Moffat did harm the characters, it was more in the sense of like, oh, they're back now, they're perfectly fine.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, with Amy and Rory, it kind of becomes an inside joke. Amy says you won't always come, you might not come back, and he's like, when don't I come back? It's kind of, even the characters are aware that it happens. And don't get me wrong, I think in isolation it can work quite well with like a one-off character like Amy and Rory keeping dying. You could have that be a one-off thing. I guess the issue is just when that becomes the status quo, when no one is ever really under much danger. And with, like you say, with the Chibnall characters as well, I often felt like they weren't really under much threat at all. You never really thought that they were properly in danger for their lives, really. At least I didn't. I didn't get that feeling. Whereas, you look back at something like Still on Earth, Journey's End, and sure, no one dies in that one, but just the reaction to the Daleks showing up, Captain Jack by default saying that we're dead, I'm sorry, we're dead, and Sarah Jane, crying in fear of them, like. I think it just goes a long way in kind of, I think Russell just understands like the human condition and what it means to be a person in this world. And that's what I'm really looking forward to seeing him kind of reinstate and re-emphasize.
Yeah, 100%. Because like you like touched on as well, like I feel like with the Chibnall era, like the characters weren't really like ever like under threat. Like even where like with the Cyber Masters and the Master and Gallifrey, like it really never felt like even though like it's probably the biggest threat that they had like in ages, like it just felt like nothing because some random guy with a long beard came and like took away like any meaning from it. So it was just like it just didn't like nothing that should hit. Like I'm not asking for like all the characters to die or like anything like that, like true to happen. Just like something to actually last. Like even Graham leaving, right? That would have been whatever, right? Like a decent ending. But then of course like for whoever's opinion, right? He came back for like Jodie's last episode, which look, I like Graham and stuff. But then again, there was just like no emotional impact on like any of the characters, and the only one you could really say had any progression was Ryan, and he learned to ride a bike.
Yeah, Yeah, it's kind of weak.
Yeah, yeah. So I just really hope, just going forward with Series 14, that we do see a lot of the good like storytelling that Russell has shown, and even just like some of the like good storytelling of Series 5 of Doctor Who. It's probably one of my favorite
Mm.
series. Like
Yeah, no,
just
it's one
anything
of
around
mine
the
too.
present. Yeah, it's just like the storytelling of like the early like or like mid 2000s onwards was just really good in my opinion, and I just want to go back to that. Not completely like not the vibe or feel, just like
Yeah.
something that has that like same punch and impact.
I think that's the other thing that you mentioned that I'm really interested to see as well. Like, because obviously Russell's Doctor Who, as well as it holds up even now, it very much
Mhm.
is rooted in like sort of early 2000s culture. You know, you go to End of the World, they're playing Britney Spears as like a classic song, and you know you have obviously Boomtown, not Boomtown, sorry, the Slovene two-parter is very much kind of an allegory
Yeah.
for sort of the war on terror and all of that sort of stuff. The Master is very much kind of a Tony Blair kind of parody, and I'm going to
Mhm.
be really interested to see how he brings it forward into the 2020s. How
Yeah.
Russell handles Doctor Who in the 2020s, I think, will be a really interesting thing. I could see him being a lot more political, which I know will annoy some people. Personally, I don't mind it. I think a lot of his
Mhm.
best stuff is, politically motivated, and I think it really works, like Years and Years, and it's Sin and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Obviously, it has to maintain, Doctor Who. It has to maintain an element of levity and an element of, being a family thing. But at the same time, Doctor Who's always been used as a vehicle to sort of tell these stories, and I think that's something that Russell does really well.
Yeah, 100%. Like, and I do believe that the more subtle political undertones and messages, is 100% the way to go about it, right? Like, I never ever had an issue with like a political message being shown or just like a message in general being shown, right? Like, I always felt like good storytelling is like not just outright telling you what's going on. Like, again, some of the issues that I had with the Chibnall era and like to some degree Moffat, but not so really, is that they would like, sort of outright tell you what the message is. Like, look at Orphan 55, for example. Like by the
Mm.
end, like the whole monologue and stuff, like you didn't need that, right? Like the episode was like, well, it was bad, but like it told the story without like needing the monologue, and that's something that I want to see again from just like actual like messages that isn't told directly to the audience, like they don't understand it. And I'm really looking
Yeah.
forward to just seeing more of that, especially with Russell and seeing what he can do, like with like shows like It's a Sin. So I'm like really looking forward to just seeing like more of that, in a weird sense.
Mm. Yeah.
And
100%. Yeah, I completely agree.
Mhm. And just like a question that I do want to ask you is, like in your personal opinion, what is the best and what is the worst Doctor Who episode?
What is the oh? That's a difficult question. Worst Doctor episode I feel like is easier,
Mhm.
because this is kind of my default response ever since I saw it. Just because I'd never be like I never watched a Doctor Who episode and felt so like empty.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, like honestly, Legend of the Sea Devils might be my least favorite episode of Doctor Who. I really don't like it.
yeah,
Outside of like maybe the one scene with the Doctor and Yaz, which is like fine. The rest of it, there's just nothing that I enjoy about it really. The Sea Devils are really one note. Like they don't really feel like Sea Devils. They don't really explore any of the things that the Sea Devils are known for. When it comes to the environmental aspect to it, the cohabiting aspect to it, it's all just kind of glossed over. The sort of side cast feel really hollow as well. Like you've got that guy who watches the Madam Ching kill his dad, and then like
yeah,
within 10 minutes, she's like adopted him. It's just not very good. It doesn't look very good either, because that's one of the things you'll get. You'll hear common praise for the Chibnall era is that it looks really good. I would argue Legend of the Sea Devils is like the one where I would say it looks really quite bad by modern standards. So yeah, I
yeah,
can't even really enjoy it on that like surface level. It just doesn't work for me in a lot of ways. It's full of holes. Like the fact that they go to that village and immediately like there's a net set up to capture the Sea Devil. It's like, how did that get there? I
Mhm.
get the sense that it was like one that was butchered in the edit as well. You kind of get that sense that a lot of
Yeah.
being chopped out of it because it just doesn't really come together. Best episode it's difficult because I have a lot of answers for this. I think if I had to pick one, I think it's difficult. Because one of my immediate go-tos is Turn Left. I love alternate reality fiction, alternate history fiction, and wrapping that into like Russell's extremely well-built Doctor Who universe was always going to be a winning combination. Seeing those scenes play out without the Doctor is terrific. The whole the commentary on how humanity can be in crisis, that scene with Wilf where he's like, that's what they called them last time, is genuinely like I think the only moment that I've gotten emotional at like Doctor Who, like ever. It's like, damn, that's really quite something. In terms of that would be one of them, although that's not really a traditional Doctor Who episode in so much as the Doctor's not really in it. It's basically a Doctor Light, and you've got your Donna is basically the lead in that one. So if we're talking a more conventional episode, it would probably be either The Doctor's Wife or Amy's Choice. I flip-flop on those two because I think they're both fantastic. Amy's Choice I've loved ever since I was a kid. I think the concept of the Dream Lord is fantastic. Like a really, really wonderful concept. I love how much you learn about the Doctor, Amy, and Rory as characters in that one. I like how Rory's dream world is the one in Ledworth with the old people. That's what he sees as his dream kind of life. And for the Doctor, it's being in this impossible scenario. Life or death stakes. They're both their dream situations, and Amy's kind of stuck in the middle. Have to choose which one of these things do you want. I think that's a fantastic idea. And then the Doctor's Wife is just fantastic. Neil Gaiman just hits it out the park. Like, it's a 10 out of 10. It looks fantastic. The whole dynamic of the Doctor and the TARDIS is genius, and that ending scene of I just wanted to say hello is lovely as well. So yeah, any of those three.
No, yeah. I completely get that though. Like, a lot of them have like very strong like character dynamics, right? Like, you learn a lot of the characters, and even in Turn Left, right, you learn a lot about Wilf, you learn a lot about Donna, and you learn a lot about just the Doctor Who world without the Doctor and without like that threat of just instant alien annihilation. So no, 100% get that. Especially with Turn Left. Turn Left's a really interesting episode. Because there's a lot of ways you can view it, and it's always like weird to see a Doctor-like episode, because like, let's face it, a lot of the time a Doctor-like episode can't always be a good thing, and hasn't always been a good thing. But I think that's an exception to the rule, where like a Doctor-like episode has probably benefited a series, and especially the conclusion of that episode. I feel it was probably one of the strongest conclusions to an episode you could probably have, especially in Series 4. So no, 100%. I get with you on all that, and just like touching real quick on Legends of the Sea Devils. I get your disappointment. Like, as someone like I love classic Who. I love all of that stuff, and being able to like see the Sea Devils like on screen, like live watching it, was like something that really interested me. Right, something that I was really looking forward to. And then seeing them like Mario jump onto a ship probably was really the most disappointing thing that I've ever seen. On the screen. And like, I don't hate the Chibnall era, right? I think there's some like really good episodes. Like, I dislike the Timeless Child era, but I feel like there's like some good stories to be told. Like, I like some of the episodes in Flux, and I do really like Sausage One's Master. But Legends of the Sea Devils has always stuck out to me as an episode that doesn't feel like an actual Doctor Who episode, and feels like more like outtakes of an episode that have been merged together to make like one story. Like,
no, I get what you mean.
Yeah, like the Sea Devils weren't in the episode for like a lot of it. Like, I felt like a lot of it was padded out, and a lot of it just didn't make sense. Like, and how they got to the conclusion in the end. So no, I have to agree with you. Legend of the Sea Devils, for me as well, is probably like in my top 5 worst Doctor Who episodes that's been ever put to screen.
Yeah, it's just I described it to a friend the other day, and now I'm thinking about it, I think it really does kind of work as a description. It's kind of like if you asked ChatGPT to write a Doctor Who episode. All the basic tropes are there, but it's like none of the soul of it is, and none of the kind of the morality's there. The whole bit, it really annoyed me. The whole oh, they regard Earth as their own planet. It's like, hold on, though, it is theirs. Like, that's a weird way of phrasing it. That whole thing annoys me. And I mean, to be fair, it does have meme-worthy stuff in it. Like the "don't let the swords touch your skin" thing has become a meme, and rightly so, because it is just such a silly line on so many levels. But yeah, I feel like Legend of the Sea Devils for me is because obviously I'm not a huge Chibnall era guy. Like I said, like you said, there's some episodes that I like more than others. There's some redeeming aspects, but to me, it kind of exemplifies everything I didn't like about that era in one episode. Like the dialogue is kind of flat, the characters just feel very one-dimensional. Like the plot is very, very. It's weird because the plot of Legend of the Sea Devils is simultaneously really basic, but also padded out, and sort of there's loads of scenes of exposition that you just don't care about. Like, can we move on? Yeah. It really does just sort of feel like the culmination of the worst traits of this era, which is unfortunate because it's also like Jodie's penultimate one. It's the second to last chance. It's really, it's the last chance she has to just be the Doctor on her own, because in Power of the Doctor, she gets taken over by Sasha Dewan, and then you get the cameos of the past Doctors and all of this. So this was really the last opportunity to have her be the Doctor as she was on her own, and I can't help but feel like they kind of squandered that opportunity, like make us really miss this Doctor before she leaves, and I just didn't really get that from it. You look back at something like Matt Smith had Day of the Doctor as a penultimate episode, which in itself is a great episode. And then you got obviously Tennant, he had Waters of Mars as one of his penultimate episodes, which is fantastic. And it really, maybe it doesn't make you miss him as such, but what it does do is it's the culmination of his arc across those years. Everything had been building to that moment where he decided, what, there actually is no one to stop me. I can do whatever I want. If you've been watching the 10th Doctor's arc, that's something that started off way back in Christmas Invasion, and slowly built, with the Human Nature and Family of Blood. You had him, basically, sentencing that family to horrific fates for all eternity. And you can see him using his power more and more and more, and then it climaxes in that ultimate moment. This, by contrast, just feels like an episode that's been cobbled together, like you say. It's it just doesn't hit, not only as a penultimate episode, but also as a special as well. It was released as an Easter episode, released as a special, and there's nothing special or fun about it. When they initially kind of said the premise, I was expecting it to be something really light, fun, Pirates of the Caribbean-esque, really kind of play up the tropes and stuff. And what we got was something just really quite dull and boring, which I think.
Well, yeah, 100%. I feel especially I feel like the episodes leading up to Jodie's regeneration did Jodie as a Doctor very wrong. The ending of Flux was probably I enjoyed Flux, right? I think the Weaving Angel episode and the Sontaran episode were great, right?
I really like the Sontaran episode.
Yeah, I think
my favorite of hit Chibnall's.
Well, yeah. I felt like it made the Sontarans almost scary again. I felt threatened, and I felt like it was a good episode. But then you skip to the end of Flux, and probably the worst thing that I've ever seen in a Doctor Who episode, flat out, is the Sontaran chocolate scene. I can't get it out of my head, ever. I felt like they really did do Jodie wrong with those couple of episodes leading up. Even the Daleks as well. I felt again, it had a good premise, right? Of the time aspect and stuff, but at the same time as well, I felt as a conclusion and one of the last episodes featuring Jodie, there was character development between Yaz and the Doctor, right? But in the sense of the Doctor coming to her final days and conclusion, I did feel like there was a lack of something there. And just look at David's or even Capaldi's last few episodes, and you can really tell that it's coming to a close, right? Where you could throw either the Daleks and even Legend of the Sea Devils right in the middle of the series, and it wouldn't feel out of place.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really feel like they did a pretty dirty there.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, yeah, no, I 100% agree with everything you've said there. I think it is unfortunate because you do want, for a Doctor, you want them to go out in their blaze of glory. You want them. I mean, Capaldi had one of the best finales. Wilderness and Time Doctor Falls is phenomenal. Waters of Mars is phenomenal. Day of the Doctor, is phenomenal. And then you get to like Jodie, and it's like Legend of the Sea Devils. It's like just next to all of that, it's such a downgrade. It's like but yeah, I think I've kind of like, obviously, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of it, but I've kind of made peace with a lot of that era now. Like I know that we're out of it, kind of thing. And there are some times where people will, argue about stuff, and I'm just like, I don't care anymore, like at all.
Yeah.
I still get comments of people being like, "Oh, the Timeless Child should get retcon," and all the rest of it. And it's like, I'd just rather we move on, to be honest. I'd just rather we tell new stories. I don't need, a whole, like, I don't need a whole scene or a whole episode dedicated to undoing it. I'd rather we just tell new stories, because I think that's what Doctor Who thrives on in the end.
Well, 100%.
So, yeah,
like,
so
with that in hand, like I feel like people again, I'm not a big fan of the Chibnall era, right? I think there are some downright shocking episodes. But at the same time, I feel like people just need to sort of take a step back and sort of just realize that there is probably never going to be a Chibnall series ever again, right? You're out of that. The fact is as well with like in regards to the Timeless Child, you've sort of just got to ignore it, right? If you dislike the way that they went with the Doctor and like that whole story, just ignore it, because the chances are Russell will not want to touch that ever. Like I don't blame him either. Like no like one ever wants to touch that, because it's such a mess and it didn't get like that real proper conclusion. It sort of just was left there. So I feel like people just, again, like it was in the story, people just need to leave it and move on.
Yeah, it'll just become like the half-human thing in the movie. That's what'll end up happening in the TV movie. It'll just become like, oh yeah, that was weird. Anyway, that'll be it. And that's all I really want it to be. I don't want that to be a whole story doing it over, because, like I say, I think what I'm really looking forward to with Russell is him having. I'm looking forward to Russell not only being able to do new stories, but also I feel like he can be a lot more experimental than he could be in his first era, because obviously in the early 2000s he was bringing it back for the first time. Technology was still, somewhat, it's a lot younger. A lot of CGI technology was, much more in its infancy, and much more expensive to do at that time. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what Russell can do with even less restraints. You know what I mean? Like a Russell who can, obviously, because now you think about it, we have the MCU and we have, Star Wars made a comeback, kind of. People are used to the idea of more fantastical worlds now than they were in 2005. And I think you can really see that reflected in like Beat the Meep. I don't know whether they'd have gotten away with Beat the Meep in like 2006.
Oh yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? Whereas like 2023, in a world where Baby Yoda and Baby Groot have existed, Beat the Meep is like, makes total sense. And I'm really looking forward to seeing like him be able to do those more wacky things that he perhaps couldn't do as much in the revived series Doctor Who, even though it could also get pretty wacky sometimes.
Well, yeah, 100%, and I feel like there's a massive audience for that sort of stuff now, right? Like you mentioned, right? There's so many like science fiction programs that are going on at the moment that have received so much love, and especially like a show like Doctor Who that does have that legacy. I have no doubt that hopefully Russell is managing to like capture the people that do enjoy like the MCU and stuff, and possibly, fingers crossed, like I know he's teased stuff, spin-offs. And just like going forward in that degree as well, and just like pushing forward and not picking up from where he left off, but just picking up from where like Doctor Who was good, and where like it did have like a lot of people that like unanimously thought that it was genuinely good.
Yeah. Like the thing is with the 60th, a lot of people are like, oh, it's just 10 and all of the rest of it. It's like, I get that, but you've also got to think, from a casual audience perspective, he is the Tom Baker of the 21st century, pretty much.
Yeah.
He is to us now what Tom Baker was back then. He is basically the face. If you want to get casuals back on board, might not be the most, what you call it? Like, it might not be the most creative solution to it, but getting David Tennant and Catherine Tate together in an anniversary, you've guaranteed that you're going to get people back. And I mean, just look at the views on those trailers. Just look at the tweets of people talking about it, say that they haven't watched Doctor in years, but they're looking forward to watching the 60th and then Series 14 as well with Shooty. I think it's all just been placed so well. And I think if he sticks the landing, then Doctor Who's future is looking very bright. And I just can't wait for it to get here.
100%. And just like a closing note of the episode, I really do hope that like there are more spin-offs, more fans, more merchandise, especially more merchandise. I'm a massive merchandise guy, and the fact that there hasn't been so much as of recent has I feel like when it comes to a show like Doctor Who, I'm someone who like wants to collect the stuff. Like I know you have one as well, but I'm sitting next to like a Cyberman head, right? The company. I'm someone who wants to collect that merchandise. So like, as just a closing statement, I really do hope that Russell manages to bring back some of the merchandise, and it is looking pretty hopeful, to be fair.
Yeah, I want more action figures. Give me that. I've always thought, now that they've got Disney Plus involved, Doctor Who Lego, more permanent Doctor Who Lego would be sick, or even just a couple more sets. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility if Doctor Who goes really big. I mean, they did it before with the Lego Ideas sets, Lego Dimensions, Like, I think it could definitely happen. But yeah, no, 100%. I'm looking forward to the idea of more merchandise as well, like more figures, more like clothing items, just everything. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. That's something that I really do want to see just going forward. And again, I really do appreciate you coming on the episode and taking nearly an hour out of your day just to talk about everything Who related.
No worries. It's a pleasure. I enjoyed myself.
Yeah, I'm glad, man. And for everyone watching today's episode, if you did enjoy these conversations, there's plenty more over on the Tharries YouTube channel if you just want to go and check some of that stuff out. But I've been your host, Samuel, and I will catch you in the next episode of Trash Talk.